Strange alien curiosity. The Celtran delegation arrived at the human space station with much excitement. Celtrans were a jelly-like alien species, their bodies translucent and shimmering with colors that shifted like oil on water. For the human crew aboard the station, this was their first close encounter with Celtrans. Among the Celtran visitors was a young alien named Zev. Unlike the others, who seemed more interested in observing the station's large windows and glowing starfields, Zev had an unusual fixation. Its golden eyes gleamed with curiosity as it noticed the strange, hard objects humans carried around. Zev floated toward a human engineer named Sam, who was busy working on a control panel. Sam wore a tool belt around his waist, with various metallic instruments clinking together as he moved. Zev tilted its head, fascinated. "Human," Zev said, its voice soft and melodic. "What is that hard object on your wrist?" Sam looked up, surprised but amused. He glanced at his wrist and realized Zev was talking about his old-fashioned metal watch. "Oh, this," Sam replied, tapping the watch. "It's a timepiece. It tells me the time." Zev blinked slowly, as if trying to process the concept. "Time. I do not understand your hard objects. May I touch it?" Sam hesitated. He had read reports about Celtrans and their intense curiosity, but he wasn't sure what would happen if one of them touched something as delicate as his watch. Would it break? Would it melt into their gelatinous form? Sam decided to be cautious. "I don't think that's a good idea," Sam said with a friendly smile. "It's kind of important to me, and I don't want it to get damaged." Zev's form rippled slightly, a sign of disappointment. "Humans are so careful with their hard things. They are fascinating to me. My people do not have such objects." Zev's words piqued Sam's curiosity. "You don't have any hard materials where you come from?" "No," Zev replied. "Our world is soft, fluid, flexible. Hardness is rare. It feels unnatural to us. That is why we find it so intriguing." As Zev spoke, other crew members began to notice the interaction. A small group gathered around, watching as Zev floated closer to Sam, inspecting his tool belt with unblinking eyes. "What are those?" Zev asked, pointing a gelatinous limb toward the set of wrenches hanging from Sam's belt. "They're tools," Sam explained. "We use them to tighten bolts and fix machinery. They're very sturdy and strong." "May I touch one?" Zev asked again, its voice almost pleading. Sam glanced at his crewmates. A few shrugged, while others looked uneasy. Finally, Sam decided to let Zev touch one of his smaller, less important wrenches. He unclipped it from his belt and held it out. "Okay, but be careful," Sam warned. Zev extended a shimmering, translucent limb and gently wrapped it around the wrench. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the wrench sank into Zev's body, as if it had been absorbed. The crew gasped, and Sam instinctively took a step back. "Hey, what did you do? Where's the wrench?" Zev's body rippled again, and the wrench reappeared, completely intact, in its outstretched limb. Zev held it out to Sam with a delighted hum. "It tickled," Zev said. "Your hard thing is very interesting. I did not damage it." "See." Sam cautiously took the wrench back and inspected it. It was exactly the same as before. No dents, no scratches, no signs that it had just been inside an alien's body. "That's impressive," Sam admitted, still a bit shaken. The other crew members murmured among themselves, some amused, others wary. One of the senior officers, Lieutenant Harris, stepped forward. "All right, everyone, let's not let our guests get too carried away," Harris said firmly. He turned to Zev. "We appreciate your curiosity, but some objects on this station are very important. They can't be touched, not even by accident. Do you understand?" Zev's form dimmed slightly, a sign of submission. "I understand, but your hard things are so fascinating. They are unlike anything I have ever known." The crew exchanged glances. Zed's fascination was innocent, even childlike, but there was something unsettling about how easily it had absorbed and returned the wrench. As the group began to disperse, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of Zev's curiosity. The alien's golden eyes continued to scan the room, searching for its next hard object to explore. And deep down, Sam wondered, what would happen if Zev touched something it shouldn't? Small experiment. Big surprise. The encounter with Zev left the crew buzzing with mixed feelings. Some laughed it off, calling it a harmless quirk of an alien species. Others, like Sam, couldn't stop thinking about it. The way the wrench disappeared and reappeared so effortlessly wasn't just strange. It felt almost unnatural. Over the next few days, Zev's curiosity only grew stronger. Wherever the humans worked, Zev followed, eyes shimmering with that same innocent yet persistent fascination. It was during a quiet shift in the engineering bay that Zev decided to escalate his curiosity. Sam was repairing a damaged console, surrounded by a clutter of tools and spare parts. Zed floated nearby, quietly observing every movement. Human, Zev finally spoke, breaking the silence. You use many hard things. Sam chuckled, tightening a bolt. Yeah, we kind of have to. Space isn't very forgiving. Zev shifted closer, eyes fixed on the metallic tool in Sam's hand. May I touch that one? Sam paused. The memory of the wrench was still fresh, but curiosity got the better of him. He picked up a smaller tool, a basic screwdriver, and held it out. All right, but just this once. This isn't valuable. Just don't make it disappear for too long. Zev's golden eyes brightened with excitement. A soft, gelatinous limb stretched forward, gently wrapping around the screwdriver. Just like before, the tool slowly sank into Zev's body. This time, however, something was different. Zev's body didn't simply ripple, it glowed faintly. The glow pulsated, as if the screwdriver was being analyzed at a deeper level. Sam frowned. Zev, everything okay in there? The glow faded, and Zev's body shimmered. The screwdriver reappeared, perfectly intact. But as Sam reached out to take it, he noticed something odd. The screwdriver felt smoother, almost lighter in his hand. He twisted it experimentally. It moved with more precision, as if the balance had somehow been fine-tuned. Sam arched an eyebrow. Did you change it? Zev tilted its head. I do not know. It feels softer now. Looks the same to me, Sam mumbled, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He pocketed the tool and decided not to dwell on it. At least not yet. The curiosity spreads. Word about Zev's ability spread quickly across the station. Crew members began to approach the alien out of curiosity, offering harmless objects to see what would happen. Pens, helmets, small gadgets, everything Zev touched returned slightly improved, as if enhanced by some strange alien intuition. At first, the crew found it amusing. A broken comm device that had been malfunctioning for weeks suddenly worked flawlessly after Zev's touch. A crew member's old knife became sharper than ever, its edge glinting unnaturally. But not everyone found it funny. Commander Darnell watched from a distance, arms folded and face tense. I don't like it, he muttered to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris. It's harmless, Harris replied with a shrug. Nothing's been damaged. If anything, it's helping. Darnell's eyes narrowed. That's what bothers me. Nothing should improve just by being absorbed. Technology doesn't work like that. Harris hesitated but said nothing. He knew better than to argue when Darnell's gut instincts kicked in. A bold request. Later that day, Zev approached Sam again. This time, its gaze lingered on a more complex piece of equipment, a small handheld plasma cutter. Human, Zev began, eyes bright with curiosity. What is that glowing hard thing? Sam's grip tightened around the cutter. It's a plasma tool. Cuts through metal. Not something you can touch. Zev blinked. Plasma. I do not know that word. May I touch it? Sam shook his head firmly. No, this isn't like a wrench or screwdriver. It could hurt you. Zev's body rippled faintly, a sign of disappointment. I do not fear hard things. They cannot harm me. Sorry, Zev. Commander's orders. But even as Sam spoke, he could feel Zev's gaze lingering on the plasma cutter. Curiosity crosses a line. Later that night, while most of the crew rested, Zev quietly wandered the station alone. It had learned the human concept of rules, but understanding them didn't mean following them. Zev's people believed curiosity was a gift, something meant to be explored without restriction. As it floated past the locked engineering storage room, Zev's eyes caught sight of something behind the glass, a restricted container glowing faintly under the dim lights. Why do humans lock their most interesting things away? Zev mused softly. The container held a small, unstable energy core used for testing. Even the engineers handled it carefully, knowing how volatile it could be. Zev extended a limb toward the glass. Curiosity grows. The station drifted silently in orbit around a pale blue gas giant, its metallic hull glinting under distant stars. Inside, however, tension was quietly building. Zev's strange ability to absorb and enhance objects had become the subject of whispered conversations in the mess hall and cautious glances in the corridors. Zev, on the other hand, was entirely unaware of the unease. To the young Celtran, this human fascination with hard things was like opening a door to an entirely new world. On its home planet, nothing existed that was rigid or inflexible. Structures were woven from organic matter, and tools were fluid extensions of their own bodies. This concept of permanence and solidity was not just strange, it was captivating. But curiosity, left unchecked, often leads to dangerous places. A growing obsession. Zev's fascination began to narrow, shifting from simple tools to more complex machinery. It no longer cared for wrenches or helmets. Now, its glowing eyes fixated on the humming consoles, the intricate lattice of wires beneath panels, and most of all, the heavy, restricted container in the engineering bay. Every time Zev passed by, it paused, gazing at the container through the reinforced glass. The faint hum of energy within seemed to call to it, like a hidden melody only Zev could hear. Human, Zev asked one afternoon. Turning to Sam, what is that hard box with the glowing heart? Sam, crouched beneath an open panel, wiped his hands on his uniform and sighed. That's not for you, Zev. It's dangerous. Zev's body shifted, almost like it was frowning. Dangerous. But hard things do not harm me. I made your tool better. I can make the box better too. Sam glanced at the container, his brow furrowed. It's not about making it better. That thing holds a volatile energy core. If it goes wrong, it could take half the station with it. It's unstable. Zev's head tilted in that curious way it always did. Unstable, like a soft thing. No, Sam said, firmly this time. Not like that. Just trust me on this one. Some things aren't meant to be touched. Zev didn't reply, but its golden eyes lingered on the container far longer than Sam liked. A test of limits. Later that evening, the engineering team held a maintenance drill. It was routine, nothing unusual, until Zev floated into the room. The crew had become accustomed to its silent observation, but tonight something felt different. Zev's gaze kept drifting toward the restricted container. Lieutenant Harris noticed it first. Eyes front, Zev. You're making the crew nervous, he joked, though his tone lacked humor. Zev rippled slightly, a sign of amusement. I am only watching. But even as it spoke, one of its limbs extended, slowly, cautiously, toward the control panel that monitored the container's internal pressure. A subtle change, a flick of a translucent limb. No one noticed the faint flicker on the screen, the smallest blip in the energy readout. But Zev did, and it wanted to see more. Crossing the line. That night, the station dimmed to its usual sleep cycle, The corridors emptied as most of the crew retreated to their quarters. Sam, exhausted from the day's drills, collapsed into his bunk without much thought. Zev, however, wandered. The Celtran didn't require sleep like humans. Instead, it floated through the quiet station, its body shimmering softly in the low light. There was no sound except for the distant hum of engines and the occasional creak of metal as the station adjusted its orbit. When Zev reached the engineering bay, it stopped. The restricted container sat silently behind the glass, glowing faintly. The energy inside pulsed softly, faint but steady, like a heartbeat. Zev stared at it for a long moment. Curiosity whispered louder than the warning Sam had given. The glass separating Zev from the container wasn't locked, only reinforced to prevent accidental contact. Zev extended a limb, sliding through the small gap beneath the barrier. Its soft, gelatinous form slipped easily past the glass until its limb hovered just above the container. One touch wouldn't hurt. Just to understand. The limb gently pressed against the surface of the box. The pulse. The container shuddered beneath Zev's touch. A soft hum filled the room, vibrating through the floor. Zev's eyes brightened as the energy core reacted to its presence. Suddenly, the core flared, a pulse of white light that shot through Zev's body like electricity. Zev's form rippled violently, but instead of retreating, it absorbed the energy. The pulse faded, and silence returned. Zev withdrew its limb, watching as the core settled back into stillness. It had not broken. Instead, the core hummed softer now, its unstable pulse suddenly calm. Zev tilted its head. Softer, it whispered, its voice echoing faintly in the empty bay. But far above, in the command deck, a single alert flashed red on the screen. Energy core stabilized. Unauthorized contact detected. The restricted object. The engineering bay was silent when Sam arrived the next morning. But something felt off. Tools were exactly where they had been left, and the consoles glowed with the usual dim hum of standby power. Yet the air carried a strange tension, like the station itself was holding its breath. Sam's gaze drifted toward the restricted container. The energy core inside pulsed softly, steady, and calm. That alone was unusual. For weeks, the core had been unstable, its readings unpredictable. The station's best engineers had tried everything to stabilize it, but no one had succeeded. Now, without explanation, the core's erratic energy levels had smoothed overnight. Sam knelt in front of the console, frowning at the readout. The logs confirmed the core had been unstable the previous evening, but sometime around 300 hours, everything changed. A spike in activity, brief but intense, had been recorded, followed by near-perfect stability. Core stabilized. Unauthorized contact detected, Sam muttered, reading the final line of the report. His eyes narrowed. Unauthorized. Before he could process it further, the soft hum of approaching footsteps broke his concentration. Human, you seem troubled. Sam turned to find Zev floating just beyond the doorway, its golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The alien's body shimmered with a subtle ripple, as if the light itself bent around it. I was just looking at the core, Sam said carefully. It stabilized overnight. Strange, right? Zev's head tilted. Is that not a good thing? It is, Sam replied slowly. But the logs say someone touched the container. It triggered an alert. Zev drifted closer, stopping just short of the glass separating them from the restricted box. I was curious, Zev said softly, as if confessing to something harmless. I wanted to understand the hard thing. Sam's heart skipped. Zev, please tell me you didn't. I touched it, Zev said simply. I did not break it. Sam's mouth opened, but words didn't come immediately. He glanced back at the core, glowing softly within the container. By all appearances, it was in perfect condition. You're telling me you stabilized it by touching it? Zev nodded, its eyes narrowing slightly. The hard things you guard feel fragile to me. I made it softer. Sam rubbed his forehead, letting out a long breath. Zev, you can't just look. That wasn't just some random object. That core could have destroyed half the station if it overloaded. But it did not, Zev replied, unblinking. It is better now. A growing unease. Sam didn't report Zev immediately. Part of him didn't know how to explain the situation without sounding crazy. How would he tell the commander that a jelly-like alien had fixed a dangerously unstable energy core by touching it? Still, the incident left him uneasy. Over the next few days, Zev's interest in the restricted container didn't fade. If anything, it deepened. Sam frequently caught Zev drifting near the glass, watching the core pulse faintly in the dark. It didn't try to touch it again, but the way Zev lingered made Sam feel like this wasn't over. One evening, while performing routine maintenance, Sam noticed Zev staring at a different object. This time, a reinforced vault deeper in the engineering sector. The vault housed prototype technology, some of it classified. Sam set his tools down and crossed the room. Zev, you can't keep doing this. The alien's eyes flickered toward him. I only observe. Yeah, well, sometimes observing leads to touching, and we both know how that turns out. Zev's gaze lingered on the vault. What is inside the hard box? Sam crossed his arms. Classified. And you're not touching it. Zev's form shimmered, a faint ripple that Sam had come to recognize as the alien equivalent of curiosity. Humans fear the things they lock away, Zev said softly. But hard things only remain dangerous when they are left alone. That's not how this works, Sam replied firmly. Some things are dangerous no matter how soft they feel to you. Zev didn't argue, but as Sam walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of their conversation. Commander Darnell's warning. The situation escalated the next day when Commander Darnell called Sam to his office. Sit down, Darnell said, his tone flat. He tapped on his console, and a security feed appeared on the screen. Sam's stomach twisted as he watched the grainy footage of Zev slipping a limb past the glass and touching the restricted container. This happened under your watch, Darnell said, leaning back in his chair. Care to explain why you didn't report it? Sam hesitated. I didn't think it was necessary. Zev didn't damage the core. In fact, it stabilized it. You saw the readings. That's not the point, Darnell snapped. This alien, whatever it is, bypassed a restricted area without hesitation. What happens when it tries touching something that can't be fixed? Sam exhaled slowly. I don't think Zev means any harm. It's just curious. Darnell's eyes narrowed. Curiosity isn't an excuse. If Zev touches something classified, it's on you. I'm issuing a strict no-contact order. If Zev so much as looks at another restricted object, you report it immediately. Understood. Sam nodded reluctantly. Understood. But as he left the office, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was already beyond his control. Zev's curiosity wasn't fading. It was growing. And sooner or later, something was going to give. The station's low hum filled the engineering bay as Sam tightened the final bolt on a malfunctioning console. His thoughts drifted back to Commander Darnell's warning. Since the security footage surfaced, Zev had been kept at a distance from restricted areas. But even without direct access, the alien's golden eyes often lingered on things it wasn't supposed to touch. Zev had stayed away from the restricted core since the confrontation. At least, Sam thought it had. Until tonight. The engineering bay was empty except for the faint glow of diagnostic screens. Sam had drawn the late shift, and the rest of the crew had retired to their quarters. Zev hadn't been seen for hours. But the absence didn't ease Sam's mind. The soft hiss of the automatic door broke the silence. Zev drifted in silently, as it always did. Its translucent form glowed faintly in the dim light, casting soft shadows on the metallic walls. Sam didn't look up. You're not supposed to be in here. Zev's voice was soft, almost apologetic. I was curious. Sam sighed, putting down his tools. You're always curious. He leaned against the console, arms crossed. Curiosity's going to get you into trouble. Zev approached slowly, pausing just short of the restricted section. Its gaze drifted toward the reinforced vault, the same one it had fixated on days earlier. Sam followed Zev's eyes and frowned. Don't even think about it. Zev's head tilted, and for a moment, the alien said nothing, but then it floated closer, its shimmering form barely making a sound. Why do humans lock these things away? Zev asked softly. Because some things are dangerous, Sam replied, his voice firmer now. We don't understand them fully. They could hurt people. I did not hurt the core, Zev said. I made it better. Sam exhaled slowly, rubbing his face. Yeah, I remember. But that doesn't mean you can just. Before he could finish, the station lights flickered. Sam stiffened, pushing away from the console. That's not normal. The lights flickered again, this time accompanied by a soft, pulsing hum, deeper than the usual background noise. It was coming from the vault. Sam's heart sank. He sprinted to the console, fingers flying over the keys as he pulled up the diagnostic report. His eyes scanned the screen, searching for the source of the fluctuation. The vault's internal systems showed an energy spike, one that hadn't been there moments ago. Zev, Sam said carefully, his voice low. What did you do? Zev's eyes gleamed faintly. I did not touch it. Sam wasn't sure if he believed that. Suddenly, the vault shuddered. A bright white crack of energy slashed across its surface, and the reinforced metal began to heat, glowing orange at the edges. The core inside was destabilizing. Sam slammed his hand on the comm panel. Engineering to command. We have a containment breach in the lower sector. A voice crackled back. Commander Darnell here. What's happening? The prototype vault. It's overheating. We need containment now. Before Darnell could respond, the vault emitted another pulse of energy, this one stronger. Sam stumbled back as sparks rained down from the ceiling. The station's emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in a dull red glow. Zev didn't move. It floated closer to the vault, watching with quiet fascination. Zev, get back, Sam shouted, grabbing for the alien's arm. His hand passed through the gelatinous form, barely slowing Zev down. Zev extended a limb, reaching for the vault. Sam's breath caught in his throat. Don't. Too late. Zev's limb pressed against the glowing surface, and in an instant, the vault flared with blinding light. The energy coursed through Zev's body, illuminating its translucent form like a lantern. For a moment, Sam was sure Zev would dissolve, vaporized by the unstable power. But the opposite happened. The vault's violent pulsing slowed. The orange glow faded. The crackling energy dissipated as Zev absorbed the excess power. The station grew quiet once more. Zev slowly withdrew its limb, eyes glowing softly. It turned to face Sam, its body rippling with faint golden light. It is calm now, Zev said simply. Sam collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. His pulse thundered in his ears. A voice crackled through the comm panel. Sam, report. What happened? Darnell's voice was sharp. Sam stared at Zev for a long moment before replying. It's under control, he said, though he wasn't sure if that was the truth. Unanswered questions. As emergency teams arrived, Sam stood quietly in the corner, watching as engineers secured the vault. Darnell entered the room moments later, his eyes narrowing as they landed on Zev. Someone want to explain how that thing shut down an unstable energy core? Darnell asked, his gaze locked on the alien. Sam hesitated. I don't know. Zev just touched it. Darnell's frown deepened. This isn't sustainable. We can't have something wandering around that can interact with restricted tech. Zev, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Your hard things do not listen to you, it said softly. But they listen to me. No one had a response. And as Zev's gaze drifted once more toward the restricted vault, Sam realized something chilling. This wasn't over. Zev was still curious. Curiosity or threat. The station's hum felt heavier in the days that followed the vault incident. The crew carried on with their duties, but the easy camaraderie that once filled the halls had shifted. Conversations quieted when Zev passed by. Engineers subtly powered down machinery when the alien drifted too close. Even Sam, who had defended Zev more than anyone, couldn't shake the unease. Zev, however, seemed unchanged. It continued to float through the station, eyes gleaming with that same innocent curiosity, unaware, or perhaps indifferent, to the growing discomfort it left in its wake. But the unease wasn't just from the crew. The vault hadn't fully recovered. Despite Zev's intervention, occasional flickers still rippled through the vault's surface, as if it remembered the touch that stabilized it. Sam ran diagnostic after diagnostic, but nothing pointed to a clear issue. The core inside the vault should have been inert, and yet energy still pulsed faintly, alive in a way that defied explanation. Commander's not letting this slide, Harris warned as he leaned against the console one evening. Sam glanced up from his screen. I know. He's been watching Zev like a hawk. Can't blame him, Harris said, folding his arms. Zev might have stopped the vault from blowing, but that's two restricted areas it's interacted with. What if it touches something we can't fix? Sam frowned but didn't respond immediately. His eyes drifted across the engineering bay, where Zev hovered quietly near the starboard window, gazing out at the gas giant below. Zev had saved the station. That much was undeniable. But Harris had a point. The vault's instability hadn't been caused by malfunctioning equipment. It had started the moment Zev began watching it. A quiet shift. Later that night, Sam returned to his quarters, the weight of the day pressing down on him. He collapsed onto the narrow bunk, but sleep refused to come. The station lights dimmed to their nighttime glow, and the familiar stillness of deep space filled the room. But even through closed doors, Sam felt it. The subtle ripple of Zev's presence, somewhere beyond the walls. His comm beeped softly. A message. 217. Unauthorized access detected in research wing. Sam's blood ran cold. He didn't hesitate. Grabbing his jacket, he bolted into the corridor. The station was silent as his boots echoed against the metal floor. A few late shift crew members glanced his way but said nothing. When Sam reached the research wing, the doors slid open with a soft hiss. And there, standing in the middle of the room, was Zev. Its body glowed faintly under the flickering blue lights, limbs outstretched toward a console that controlled the station's shield systems. Zev, Sam called out carefully, his voice firm but not aggressive. What are you doing? Zev didn't turn immediately. Its eyes remained fixed on the console, as if deep in thought. The hard things here are quiet, Zev said, finally facing Sam. They hum, but faintly. I wanted to listen closer. Sam stepped forward slowly. You can't just walk into restricted areas, Zev. The commander's already on edge. Zev's head tilted, the soft glow in its eyes flickering slightly. Why do you fear me? Sam hesitated. No one fears you, Zev. We just... Yes, they do, Zev interrupted softly. I see it in their eyes. For the first time since arriving on the station, Zev's tone shifted, less curious, more distant. They lock away their fragile things, and when I touch them, they grow stronger. Yet you fear that I will break them. Sam swallowed hard. We're not used to beings like you. Humans build walls around things we don't understand. That doesn't mean we want to lock you out. Zev drifted closer, until it hovered just a few feet away. Its golden eyes locked onto Sam's, studying him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. I do not break things, Zev said softly. I make them better. But if you keep locking away the hard things... Zev's form rippled slightly. They will eventually break on their own. A new development. Before Sam could respond, the console beside them flickered violently. Sparks danced along the edges of the screen, and the room was suddenly filled with the sharp whine of overloading circuits. Sam's hand shot out instinctively, grabbing Zev's arm, though his fingers passed halfway through its gelatinous form. "Zev, step back." Zev didn't move. Instead, it extended one limb toward the console. The moment its translucent fingers touched the surface, the sparks ceased. The console dimmed, and the overload vanished in an instant. Sam let out a shaky breath. I did not cause this," Zev said quietly. The hard thing was already breaking. Sam's heart pounded in his chest. Had it? Or had Zev's presence accelerated it? He wasn't sure anymore. The commander arrives. Minutes later, the research wing's door hissed open again. This time, it was Commander Darnell, his eyes immediately locking onto Zev. "I got the alert," Darnell said coldly, stepping inside. "What happened?" Sam stepped forward, placing himself between Darnell and Zev. "There was a power surge," Sam explained. "Zev shut it down before it could spread." Darnell's gaze hardened. Or maybe Zev caused it. Zev remained silent, its gaze flicking between the two humans. Darnell exhaled sharply. "I warned you, Sam. This ends now." "No," Sam said firmly. "Zev didn't cause this. If it wasn't here, the entire wing might have gone down." Darnell's lips pressed into a thin line. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Darnell glanced at Zev. "I want constant surveillance on it. No more wandering the station alone." "I understand," Zev replied softly. But as Darnell left the room, Sam noticed something strange. Zev wasn't watching the commander. It was watching the console, eyes narrowed, body tense. And Sam had the unsettling feeling that whatever was happening with the station, Zev wasn't just observing it. It was waiting for something. The final touch. The station's atmosphere had shifted. Days passed without incident, but the weight of unspoken fear hung over the crew like a storm cloud. Zev had been placed under constant surveillance, escorted by 2 engineers at all times. Despite the precautions, Sam could feel the crew's patience wearing thin. Commander Darnell's orders were clear. Zev was no longer trusted. Zev, however, seemed unaffected. It continued to drift quietly through the station, offering polite smiles and soft, melodic greetings to anyone it encountered. Its golden eyes still shimmered with that ever-present curiosity, but something behind them had changed. The innocent excitement was gone. Now Zev's gaze lingered longer, observing everything with an almost calculating calm. And Sam noticed. The restricted vaults return. One evening, as Sam conducted routine checks, he caught sight of Zev standing by the reinforced vault, the same one that had nearly destabilized before. The vault sat silently behind its barrier, humming faintly. Zev's hand hovered just inches from the glass, but this time it didn't press forward. "You're not supposed to be here," Sam said quietly, stepping closer. Zev turned slowly, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly. The hard thing hums again. Sam's eyes flicked toward the console. It showed nothing out of the ordinary. "It's fine," he replied, though his voice carried little confidence. "We fixed it." "No," Zev whispered. "It is pretending." Before Sam could respond, the station lights flickered, just once. The change was subtle, but the hairs on the back of his neck rose immediately. Sam tapped his comm. "Engineering to command. I'm detecting fluctuations near the restricted vault again. Can you confirm?" A pause. Then Harris's voice crackled through. "Negative, Sam. Readings are normal from here. Probably just a glitch. You've been on edge since the last incident." Sam's jaw tightened. Maybe Harris was right. Maybe it was nothing. But he couldn't ignore the way Zev stared at the vault, as if it was something alive. An unseen threat. Later that night, as the station settled into its low-power cycle, Sam remained awake, pacing the engineering bay. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then, around 200 hours, the alarm sounded. Sam bolted upright, heart pounding. The emergency lights painted the station in deep crimson as warning sirens echoed through the halls. "This is command." Darnell's voice boomed through the comms. "We're detecting a critical surge in the restricted sector. All personnel, report immediately." Sam sprinted toward the vault, arriving to find the area bathed in flickering light. The console was sparking violently, and the vault itself throbbed with an eerie glow. The unstable core inside wasn't just malfunctioning, it was breaking free. Darnell and Harris rushed in behind Sam. "How the hell did this happen?" Darnell barked. Sam's eyes locked onto the vault, his heart sinking. "I don't know. The readings were fine earlier." As the crew scrambled to contain the breach, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the chaos. Zev. The alien drifted closer, unbothered by the frantic energy in the room. Its eyes narrowed, observing the vault like a puzzle it had already solved. Darnell spotted Zev immediately. "Get it out of here." Sam stepped forward. "Wait." "No," Darnell snapped. "This thing's been poking around the vault for days. I'm not letting it near that core again." But even as Darnell spoke, the vault trembled violently. The reinforced metal groaned under the pressure, glowing brighter with every passing second. Zev watched it all unfold silently. Then, without warning, it moved. The touch that changed everything. Before anyone could react, Zev drifted forward, pressing both hands against the vault surface. "Get back," Darnell roared, lunging for the alien. But it was too late. A blinding white light erupted from the vault, engulfing the room in radiant energy. Sam shielded his eyes, his heart racing as the vault's violent pulsing grew louder, threatening to tear itself apart. Then, slowly, the light faded. When Sam opened his eyes, the vault sat silently, its glow reduced to a faint hum. And standing beside it was Zev, unharmed, hands still resting gently on the metal surface. The core inside no longer pulsed erratically. It was calm, still. Zev turned toward Sam and Darnell, its golden eyes soft. "It was lonely," Zev whispered, as if speaking to the core itself. "It wanted to be seen." Darnell's face twisted in confusion and frustration. "What the hell does that mean?" Sam stepped forward, his gaze locked on Zev. "I think the core was unstable because it wasn't finished," Sam said carefully. "Zev didn't just fix it. It connected with it." Zev's head tilted slightly. "The hard things speak. You just cannot hear them." Darnell exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I don't like this. We can't keep relying on an alien to fix our technology. It's not natural." But as the alarms faded and the vault stabilized, Sam knew the truth. Zev hadn't caused the station's problems. It had saved it, again. The unspoken warning. As the crew dispersed and the vault was secured, Zev lingered, gazing at the now quiet core. Sam approached carefully. "You knew this was going to happen, didn't you?" Zev didn't respond immediately. Instead, it floated toward the window, staring out at the vast expanse of space. "Hard things are not as solid as you believe," Zev said softly. "Sometimes they break when left alone for too long." Sam frowned. "Is that a warning?" Zev's golden eyes met his. "It is a truth, one you must learn to hear." As the station lights returned to normal, Sam stood quietly beside Zev, wondering what other hard things, hidden deep within the station, might already be breaking.